Recap in minutes. Today we will be going through a 2010 war and action miniseries entitled, The Pacific. It is the second part of the series recap. There will be spoilers ahead in this video, so chill out and enjoy. The sixth episode of the series starts in September 1944 Mobile in Alabama. A vehicle stops outside the house of Mr. Sledge. Eugene's friend Sidney Phillips comes home from the European front. At the dinner table, Eugene's mother asks him about their son. He tells them briefly that he is on the front against the Japanese. He also tells them that he has become a mortarman, which gives him the advantage to be placed a little back from the fire line. He relaxes them, saying that their kid Eugene is in good hands there. The scene shifts to Peleliu Island, where Snafu, Eugene, Lecky, and Runner were facing the attacks of the Japs. Soon their Sergeant Stone comes there, and tells them that there was a huge attack on their men at the beach. He orders them to get ready to move at any moment. After some time, Officer Haldane comes there and tells them to get ready to cross the airfield. By crossing it, they will go to the hills to escape the attacks of the Japs. He asks the companies of the platoon to gather immediately. The next moment, they all start moving to cross the airfield. Eugene and his team of Snafu stop at the strategic location to fire the mortars at the Japs. They prepare for it. It was supposed to be the preemptive strike to stop the Japs for a while so that they cross the field. When Commissioned Officer Haldane orders them to move the field, the Japs get their gear ready to fire on them. They wait for them to come near their establishment. When they go to cross, the Japs open fire and throw bombs at them. They kill multiple US Marines. Somehow they cross their posts but stop in the middle of the field. Runner gets shot in his arm, while their radio man was calling their leadership, asking them to attack from the air to subdue Japs artillery for some time. Sergeant Stone takes the receiver from him, seeing him dying of the wounds. Runner faints there too. Stone finds out that the radio was not working well at that time. He orders Lecky to go down and take the radio, and a corpsman up there to him. He runs back. Meanwhile, Snafu falls to the ground, and Eugene turns to pick him up and helps him to get to a safe place. Suddenly, one of their mortarmen named Oswald gets shot and killed. They pull him too amidst the rain of the bombs around them. While back on the base, Lecky gets hit by the bomb. When they capture the Jap settlement, they stop one of their tanks and load their wounded there. They take Lecky to the medical facility. In the next scene, they go up to the hills. Lieutenant Stone orders them to patrol the hill to know the existence of Japs there. When they go higher, they see the fortified posts of the Japs. They engage them for a while but come back to Lieutenant. He goes back to the battalion to get air support or orders change. The scene shifts to Lecky, who is in the hospital canteen. Meanwhile, Runner comes there with the bandage on his arm. He surprises Lecky to be saved from the airfield. They go on the ship deck worrying about their men in the field. The seventh episode of the series starts in October 1944 at Amerbergals, on Peleliu Island. The 1st Battalion of the U.S. Army has set up the tents there. They have cleared the hills from the Japs. Captain Haldane comes there and sits with Eugene. He starts asking questions about his home, family, and history. Eugene tells him that his father is a doctor of internal medicine, and he cures the veterans from the First World War. Stone tells him that his father is a shop foreman at a textile mill in Massachusetts, and he weaves the wool fabric for the military. After that, he asks him to wake him up after 20 minutes and lays down to sleep. In the next scene, they all go to the hilltop again after the airstrikes on the Japs. They see Colonel Puller along the way coming down from the hill and wounded. The scene shifts to John Basilone, who was in a seminar to sell war bonds. He remembers his friend Manuel while playing golf. While on the other side, Eugene and his fellow Marines were moving up to the hill. Japs were hidden there. They were attacked by the Japs there. They all run back to the bunkers. Eugene asks everyone to be silent for a moment. They make them realize that the Japs are hidden in the bunker. Berge, another mortarman, tells him that the 1st platoon has cleared the bunkers, and Japs could not be there. Berge goes near them and fires in the bunker. They got exposed and fired back. They all take positions and retaliate. Eugene throws the grenade in the hole, and the Japs come out and fire on them. The US Army gets a tank there and tears the bunker apart. They get the flamethrowers and burn the remaining Japs there. At night, Captain Haldane comes to Eugene, Snafu, and Berge. He alerts them to go to the hill with the stretchers to get back the wounded Marines. The next morning, Eugene goes to the battlefield to take the wounded back to the base. They go there even though the rescuers are being hit by the Japs. They get their wounded Eddie back to the lieutenant. But unfortunately, he dies on his way back. After some time, they go to the hill again, and a corpsman comes to them and tells them that Captain Haldane is dead. Everyone gets sad and angry there. They keep on moving up the hill after this grief. They found some dead Japs there and stayed there for some time. When Eugene sees a Jap with gold teeth, he tries to cut his jaw. But Snafu stops him, saying that he should not do that. Eugene asks him why he is stopping him while doing it himself. He reminds him of the words of a doctor that said the Japs have germs. After clearing the hill, they turn back to the other ridge of it. They go back to the shore and return to Peleliu on the ship. The 8th episode starts at Peleliu Island. Eugene was brushing his teeth, and saw a cleaner dropping some papers in the bin. He goes there and checks. He found a book of his dead Captain Haldane. He takes it and comes back to his tent. Jay comes there and says that he is transferred from their company to headquarters company. He picks up his luggage and moves. In the next scene, Sergeant Basilone was having dinner with his family, but he was uncomfortable. He stands up and sits alone. The next morning he goes to his office and types a letter for the appointment with the general. General Vandergrift meets him in the office and asks him about his matter of urgency. He requests him to send him somewhere to train the recruits. He tells him that he cannot do any more pencil work. General appreciates his thoughts. After some time, he comes to Camp Pendleton and meets the captain. He asks him to wait for a week for his assignment to start. The next moment, he was training 2 boys at the camp. He was teaching them how to handle and fix the gun at the same time. He was exemplifying their movements concerning the Japanese attacks. He tells them that preparation is the key to saving their and their men's lives. After that, they go to lunch in the mess area. He sees a girl there. He asks other girls about her and she tells him that she is Sergeant Lena Rigi. She informs him that if he is interested, he should catch them on the Friday train. Basilone comes to the train on that day. He asks Lena for his company, but she turns him down. He again goes to her to ask her to come with him. This time she agrees and comes to his room. He praises the room. She said she has no attraction to him because of his fame. She goes back after that. When they come back to the base, Basilone comes to see her again at the back of the mess. He calls her and asks her to go for dinner with him. She turns him down again, saying that she will not be free on Friday. But she proposes to him to come the next day and have breakfast with her. Knowing this, he leaves happily and comes the next day. She cooks the sandwiches for him and talks about his family. Both of them talk about their families and lives before being sergeants in the Marines. At this moment, her friends come there and he leaves. When the day starts, he goes to the base and orders the trainees, Tatum and Evanson, to settle up their guns to fire on the target. They do incredibly well and he appreciates them. In the next scene, Basilone comes to the barracks with the captain. The captain announces that the company is going to the Pacific Ocean. Soon they will be joining the war against the Japs there. After that, Basilone goes to Lena and asks her if she has any other man in her life. She was shocked by his sudden behavior. Then after a few moments, Basilone and Lena get married in the church. The series shows the scenes of February 1945 at Iwo Jima. Japs and the US Marines were fighting the battle here. John Basilone and his company were also fighting in this battle. They were all surviving the attacks, but his men were dying in the shelling, firing, and bombings. At this moment he tried to save his soldier by taking him to the beach. When he was helping him to get back, he saw the machine gunners in the bunker. They set their gun in front of them and send one man to throw the grenades. They succeed in their mission. They get back to the bunker and kill the fleeing Japs. After some time in the battle, he gets shot from the enemy's side. His trainee Tatum and Evanson were watching him die there. The 9th episode starts at Okinawa Island in May 1945. Eugene was marching on the muddy plains along with other military men. They see the islanders in poor and miserable conditions there. These circumstances were the outcome of the war. They look like Japanese, so the Marines make jokes about it. After some time, when they were walking on the trail, they saw some prisoners of war there. Snafu spits on one of them and he stands up to him. He pulls his rifle and asks him to sit down and move away. He does not care about his orders and remains silent. Meanwhile, an intelligence officer comes there and orders Eugene to get away from there. Eugene did not do anything there, but Snafu did. Soon a sergeant comes there and orders the intelligence officer to take the prisoners away from the train of the Marines. He warns Eugene of the court-martial if he hits another prisoner. After this, they take a turn on the trail, and Japs attack them. They all hide behind the blocks of the stones and estimate the retaliation. Soon a tank passes and they go up to the other side of the hill. The commissioned officer of the K Company named Stumpy orders them to set up the positions for the mortars on the hill. The night falls and it starts raining there on the hill. They all get their shovels to dig the trail deep to avoid the accumulation of water there. At the same moment, CO Mac orders Eugene and Snafu to fire the mortars. They set up to attack, but their rounds miss the ignition. Snafu tells his CO that their rounds are wet and he orders them to go down to get more. They come down to take the boxes of the dried rounds. They see an Okinawan family come under the range of the Japs' fires. They get killed there and the Marines mourn there. When they come back to the hill, Snafu strips the raincoat of his Marine and realizes his mistake. In the morning, Bergen watches through the binoculars the Japs retreating on the hill. He tells everyone to get ready to move. CO Mac orders them to make the left and right groups and climb the hill. They all start to move afterward. They climb the hill while hiding and staying behind the rocks. They saw some civilians coming down the hill. An unfortunate attack happens there. When they were all waiting for the civilians to pass, a woman stopped there. She has a baby in her hands and is wired with bombs around her body. She explodes there with her baby. After that, a machine gunner emerges behind the ridge and starts firing on them. They kill him too, but the Japs start to kill them with mortars. Seeing this, they all fall back and curse CO Mac for his dangerous assessment and orders. They come to their starting point again with a heavy loss of lives. After some time, the CO calls Eugene at the watch post. He asks him to measure the distance of the post of the Japs on the other side of the ridge. He communicates to the base to mark the coordinates and fire the mortars there. They destroy Japs' camp in this. When the Japs come out from the burned tent, they kill them too. CO Mac orders everyone to cease fire. Everyone stops but Eugene. He keeps on firing the Japs. Mac comes there and scolds him for disclosing their positions to Japs. He said they already know where we are hidden. He not only used his sidearm but his hands too if he had to kill the Japs. At night, Snafu was talking about their limited men and artillery resources. He complains about the mismanagement of the strategic locations too. Seeing these miserable conditions and talks, Peck climbs up the rock and fires on the Jap side. They rush to get him down. In this struggle, one of their men, Hams, dies there. CO Mac comes there and takes Peck away. The next day, their reinforcement came with tanks. They move up the hill. Snafu and Eugene hear the voice of a baby in a cottage. They went there but could not pick the baby up. They were thinking about the mortar attack on the cottage. Meanwhile, Mac comes there and picks him up. After some time, Eugene was sitting on the rock. Mac comes there and asks them to move to the base. He talks about a powerful bomb hit by the Americans on Japan on the last day. He said Japs are retreating to the fronts because of those bombs. He was actually talking about the atomic bombs, but did know what they were talking about. They move after sitting in the truck. The 10th and last episode of the series starts in St. Albans Military Hospital, Long Island, New York. It's on the 15th of August. Lecky was sitting and smoking with his friend there. A hospital nurse comes there and announces that the war is over and the Japanese have surrendered. Everyone gets surprised at this good news. While on Okinawa Island, the platoon also rejoiced in their victory. After some time, they all go on a train to get to their homes. Snafu teases a girl on the train and receives a slap. He comes and sits with them. They all talk about their future plans and work after the war. They talk about their weddings too. The scene shifts and shows Lena approaching the home of his dead husband Basilone. His mother opens the door and receives her. He asks her to come in. She meets Basilone's parents and his brother George on her visit. She sits there and talks about his time with him. Meanwhile, she hands his Medal of Honor over to his father. They all get emotional there. The scene shifts back to the train where Bergen says goodbye to Snafu and Eugene, when the train stops at a station. After some time in New York, Lecky goes to his previous office at the newspaper. He asks the editor to rehire him for the columnist job. He hires him and he leaves. The night fell and he kept on working on his typewriter. He hears a car approaching outside of his house. He sees his neighbor Vera Keller having been dropped by an army officer. Suddenly his mom comes and checks his activities. She turns the light on and sees his blue dress. She wishes him to wear it and goes back. The scene shifts to Snafu on the train. He picks up his luggage when the train reaches New Orleans. He wanted to say goodbye to Eugene but he did not wake him up. He leaves the train afterward. The next moment, Lecky wears his blue dress and goes to his front door neighbor Vera's home. Vera's mother comes and asks him who he is and what he wants. He tells her that they have been living in front of their home for the last 20 years. She gets embarrassed and sends Vera there. He asks Vera out for dinner but she says she has a date tonight. He was about to leave but her date came there. He still asks her for the next day's plan. She rejects her date and goes with Lecky. In the next scene, the train arrives at Mobile. Phillips comes there to the station to pick up Eugene. He drives him home. Phillips tells him that he is going to marry the most beautiful girl in the town, Mary Houston. Eugene congratulates him. When he gets home he hugs his mom and they arrange a special dinner for him too. After dinner, they go to sleep. Eugene could not sleep and had trouble with that. Drive, Sledge, who was already experienced with these patients, stood behind the door of his room. After some time, Phillips and his relatives have the wedding dance in his home. Eugene was invited too. He stands there alone and comes out of the house to smoke. Phillips comes behind and asks him to come back. They talk about their fellow men on the battleground, who could not be able to get back and died there. They talk about the miseries of the war. Phillips tries to change his mind and tells him that he will find some girl to be with him for the dance. But he refuses and stays there. The scene shifts. Lecky was having Vera in his home for dinner. They talk about the strikes going on by the steelworkers. They also talk about the invention of the TV. They all wonder how it will work with the electricity. Vera tells them about the functions of the TV and its cathode ray tube. But they continued their suspicion. The series ends when Eugene was sitting with his goggles on in the garden. His mom comes there and asks him about his future plans. He says that he just wants to rest for a while. His mother tells him that his brother would arrange a position in the bank for him. He replied that he would not work in the bank. Meanwhile, his father, Mr. Sledge, comes there and asks her to leave him alone. She goes back and Eugene lays on the ground and plays with the lily flower. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this and help the channel grow.